Hello, and welcome to Two Profs in a Pod. I'm Tanisha.
I'm Beth.
And we are faculty and faculty developers at Glendale Community College in Arizona. And we like talking about teaching, learning, and other stuff. And we're so excited to be here. As always, we are really, really excited to be here. And especially for this episode, just so everyone knows, this is our final episode. So
The finale.
I feel like something on Netflix. The finale. So what were you going to say?
I was going to say, and we have written in our notes, do we want to look back at all? ? Nah. But then we did.
We did
a little bit.
So we have some things that we want to talk about before we wrap up our final episode here. So Beth,
I think since we're not following our typical template for an episode, we could maybe lay out what we're going to be discussing. That way our listeners could fast forward if they want, or they know what's coming up, or they know when they can head on out.
Great idea. So do you want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, so we are going to talk about, we're just going to look back for a little bit and talk about what our favorite parts were about creating this podcast together. We'll talk a little bit about where we started and where we are today. And then we thought we would just maybe give a few recommendations for, well, what if people were wanting to sort of start their own podcast right now? What recommendations would we have for them? A little tiny bit about equipment, but not a whole lot, because we've been using the same equipment for a long time. So it's hard for us to comment on
equipment,
because we haven't tried 10 different things. So we can't really tell you.
Right.
And then we'll go back to our regular segment, What's on Our Radar for the Future.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump right on in.
Yeah. What was one of your favorite parts, Tanisha?
One of my favorite parts was actually getting closer to my buddy. My buddy Beth, because over the years, it's definitely evolved into more than a work relationship when it comes to us doing the podcast, being on air and off air. We definitely have a fun relationship from day one. So one of the things that I haven't mentioned to Beth yet is that today in my class, we were talking about relationships with friends, and I had pictures of my friends in the PowerPoint for my students. And there's that one picture of us that we took when we had the Elvis sunglasses on, and how one of the sunglasses had a pair of sideburns that went with my afro. So I showed that picture in my class today because we were focusing on relationship with friends, and I do consider Beth a friend. It's more than just a work relationship, and I've really enjoyed taking the time to work with my buddy. We call each other buddy.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, when Beth first called me buddy, I was like, who? What? I was like, roll with it. And now every time we see each other, we're like, buddy. So it's definitely been working with Beth.
Buddy.
Yes, buddy.
It is true. We started however many years ago wondering how we could contribute to our CTL here. Mm-hmm. What could we do that was special, that would offer something, and took the crazy idea.
Right.
Which then we thought, nah, we can't do that. And then we were like, ooh, maybe we can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we just kept doing it.
Mm-hmm. For 8 seasons.
I know. We just kept going.
We kept it rolling. Yeah. So what about you? What were some things for you, favorite parts?
Okay. Well, I can use these.
Yeah. Any.
Yeah. We did present 1 year at the Pod Network conference with other podcasters. Mm-hmm. And that was a ton of fun.
It was.
Because we got to go to the conference together. Mm-hmm. We got to meet other podcasters and connect with people who wanted to start out doing something. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then we went out.
We did.
Afterwards to celebrate.
The streets of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Found a little speakeasy.
We did, in like a basement. So very small, but it was a lot of fun. And I think on that panel, we were also the only community college.
We were.
On that panel. So, got to rep the community colleges at these conferences.
Yeah,
so
that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And something our listeners may not know is that presentation got recorded, and each group of us was tasked with creating an episode out of it.
Yes.
Which the other two presenters did do. And then we ended up not getting it out there. And it's kind of a long, drawn-out story. We tried to involve a student who was working on a final class project, and
it just didn't happen.
It didn't happen, and it kind of got away from us. And then after a while, it was like, well, that's okay. We're going to have to just let that one go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is out there. We could put that in the show notes. We could look up those episodes possibly.
That would be great.
I'm going to jot that down. We'll put those in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah, if people are interested, we can definitely get you connected with that specifically.
Okay, so what's another one of yours?
I would have to say like our guest, my favorite being Kareem, because of the fact that we have followed his progress on 3 separate episodes at different times in his life and stages in his life. So it's been really interesting kind of seeing his path and his journey from where he started to where he's at now. And at the same time where our podcast started and kind of where we're at now. So it's like he grew up with us at the same time. So it was really cool. He had to have been we had a lot of guests that I have enjoyed and I've learned a lot from, but he's definitely one of my favorites. He has like a special place in my heart. Honestly, I'm glad that we got the chance to follow up with him this season one final time. Yeah,
looking back, I think that was one really kind of cool thing we did, is to have a GCC student on and then continue to bring him back and kind of check in with him. That was fun.
And I'm sure we'll probably still continue to check in off the podcast and make sure, just check in and see how things are going.
Definitely.
How is life lifing?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've got his Insta. I'll share it with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say one thing that was really my favorite. It's kind of many things. When things work.
Yes.
Yes. So like when something in the editing works, I can't tell you how many times Tanisha and I have like looked at each other and like done a little cheer.
Yeah.
When something worked right. And like, I always felt like I was surprising myself. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
That worked and that sounds awesome or whatever, right?
Yeah.
We had a lot of small victories, let's just say, that at that moment we felt like we could do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
because we made a little cut in the audio or whatever.
Yeah. We pat ourselves on the back, do a little bit of a cheer.
Yeah.
Yeah, super excited for that. All right. So the next one, I would have to say it would have to be the theme music.
Oh, yeah.
That theme music. I mean, y'all know you've been listening. If you're a first time listener, you've been listening for a while. There's just something about that music. It's super cheesy and it's low budget, but I love it so much because it is distinctly 2 Profs in a Pod. Anytime you hear that music, you know for a fact it is 2 Profs in a Pod, because I don't know anyone else who has any theme music similar to that.
Yeah. And I don't even know if, I don't even really remember where we got that, but it was a bank of free
music
that you could use. And because we have several different tracks, right?
Right.
And it's all similarly styled. We don't use a lot of the tracks. Some of them you could use like maybe in between segments if we were really fancy.
Yeah.
But we just end up using it intro and outro, and that's it. But man, I wish I could remember the name of that music bank, but maybe it's not even relevant anymore.
It may not be.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we got the chance to use that music because it was free.
Yeah.
Can't roll up in here playing some Beyonce and saying it's ours when, we ain't trying to get sued for that. So
yeah, I love that.
But yeah, music, that was mine. What about you?
Well, And just so our listeners know, Tanisha and I basically have all the same favorite things. So
we do.
Yeah. We had a 1-year anniversary party with cake, and we did not know that Cheryl was doing some recordings and made a little mini 5-minute episode out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really fun.
Yes.
It was fun to talk to people, and it's always fun to have cake.
You can't go wrong with some cake.
And then to hear the episode where, people had listened and they were commenting and so forth was kind of fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I have enjoyed is just meeting listeners face to face, having conversations with people, receiving emails from people, texts from listeners who say they heard the episode and they enjoyed the episode. Mm-hmm. Like I know someone who is a friend of mine and is not connected to the MCCC district at all. Mm-hmm. I just shared it with her, and she'll send me texts talking about, I just heard the latest episode. Great job. So it's really cool to have those connections with people and really interacting with people off air who say, I listened and I really found this interesting or valuable or great episode. So that's something that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah. It's getting some feedback, right?
Yeah, it is that feedback.
Because it's the two of us sitting here talking and putting something out there. Yeah. Right. Hopefully content that is going to, give listeners some new ideas or help them in some way, or have them say, hey, I've got a resource for you, and, sending it to us or whatever, but then not really necessarily knowing how it's going unless people let us know.
Right. Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so do we want to talk about just a tiny bit where we started and where we are now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so this is I was going to say this is it right now. You and I are the team.
Yeah.
But when we first started, we had Cheryl Colin helping us, and so there were 3 of us basically, and she did a lot of heavy lifting in terms of editing and so forth, because Tanisha and I taught ourselves everything we know. And in those days we used Audacity, which is a free online editing tool.
Yes.
And we taught ourselves. Cheryl helped us. We had a lot of cheers those days when we did things correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we also did things like didn't hit the record button or, messed up a track.
Yeah.
So, and we have since graduated we've graduated in a couple ways. We've graduated to a Rode system. So we use the Rodecaster Pro, which I don't know that it's made anymore. Yeah. At least the model that we have.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good that Cheryl got for us. And the other biggest change is that we use Adobe Audition to edit. So we went from having to use multiple tracks.
Yes.
And putting those all together.
Yep.
Because every microphone was its own track.
Yeah.
To, on the Rodecaster Pro, we're basically, we're recording 2 tracks, but it puts it into a single track for us.
Yes, which is nice.
What a huge change.
Yeah, it made a huge difference.
Yeah. So, but we did have to still learn Audition ourselves.
Yep.
How many times, Tanisha, were we in there editing and we're also Googling how to do something?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And looking at a real quick YouTube video.
Right.
And
just figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. YouTube University has been very valuable. I know Cheryl also provided, thank goodness for her, these instructions on how to do some of the things that it's like an instruction manual, which I'm so thankful for because we did use that. We still use it.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl. So, yeah.
Cheryl is at Yavapai College now.
Yeah.
And we miss her.
Yeah. Shout out to Cheryl.
So, we still use those instructions, but we also still use YouTube.
Yep.
I because we taught ourselves, Tanisha.
We did.
It wasn't like we went to a class and then graduated from that class knowing everything. No. We learned what we had to know to get it done, and maybe a little tiny bit. Probably nothing beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we still have to Google.
Yeah, we still
occasionally.
have to Google. Mm-hmm.
And since Cheryl moved on, it's only the two of us.
It's just us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and still occasionally making errors. I know not too long ago, Sam sent us an email. Sam from Paradise Valley Community College sent us an email and was like, hey, your guys' last episode was really quiet. And as soon as I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, I know what I did wrong.
Yeah.
So we're still not without error.
Yeah, we're still working on some things, but
we've
done our best.
We don't have a giant budget with a huge crew.
No, it's just the two of us. So,
and that means if we can do it,
you can do it.
Anybody can do it.
Yeah, anybody can do it. And a lot of people are definitely doing podcasts now. We're seeing a lot more of that compared to when we started. So I guess that leads us into the next piece as far as what would we recommend for people now, especially living in a world where we see podcasts everywhere, not just listening to audio, but now with YouTube having audio and visual at the same time. So I think there's so much to kind of really learn from. So the one thing that I would recommend for people now is to just explore what's out there. Take some time to kind of pay attention to how people are doing things as far as their setup, their structure, because that's what we did before we even started. We said, let's explore some podcasts and see what we like.
Yeah. And we took notes. I want to say, Tanisha, we worked on planning this.
We did.
For 6 months or a year.
It was for a while. Yeah.
A long time. Figuring everything out.
Yeah.
Before we actually started recording or pushing buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is very important because I'm always a fan of anytime you're building anything from the ground up, you need to make sure you build a strong foundation on which to build your house upon. If your foundation is faulty or shaky, it can make things a little bit more difficult as you go on. So we built a strong foundation.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We really talked about how we wanted to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, we didn't write this down, but I think for us anyway, right, we're in public education. We know that our audience is probably mostly in public education, except for our friends and fam. So it was really important for us to be positive.
Yes.
Well, and nobody likes listening to negative podcast people anyway. So
yeah.
That was kind of easy, but also we're very much aware of just our audience and probably expectations of us.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's important for people who are starting out to really think through those things. Yeah, there's probably more we could say. We could probably have an episode just about all of those, but we won't. We felt it was very important to have a structure to our episodes.
Yes.
And follow that structure each time so that our listeners would know, okay, this is this segment.
Yep.
Okay, we're moving into this segment. Okay, next is what's on their radar. Okay, I'm done listening.
Right. Right. Those are people can drop off. Right. But but at least they know to expect it.
Yeah. And I'm saying that because we do see a drop off when we get to that. When we get to that part in the podcast.
Yes.
But that's fine. People got what they came for and, then they can leave.
Yep.
Even if they're missing out a little bit.
Yep.
Just kidding. Yeah. So equipment, or did you want to say more about what we would recommend?
No, I think that's good. Yeah.
Equipment is probably the hardest one for us to talk about because it's not like we tried out a bunch of different things.
Right.
We started out very simply with Audacity, and I don't even remember what microphones we had, but they weren't as good a ones as we have now.
I think they were like microphones you would use in a studio.
Yeah.
With kind of that scrim screen thing that comes with it. But now we upgraded a little bit. So
yeah. Yeah. And that was all because of Cheryl, right? She who got the Rodecaster Pro, and we've got Rode microphones now. Nowadays, if you do go shopping, you can find kits.
Yep.
So depending on what your philosophy is or how into the sound and all of that you are, you could get a kit that comes with microphones and it comes with a, something like we've got
Right.
a Rodecaster Pro type
Right.
device that, you can plug your mics into and headphones into and whatnot. For not that expensive.
No, it didn't look like it was. It looked like it was pretty affordable. Mm-hmm.
For really cheap ones.
Yeah, I don't think we saw anything where they were charging like $2,000 or anything astronomical like that.
I mean, that might exist somewhere, but
probably, but what we have is definitely not in our budget.
Oh, no, definitely not. Definitely explore, and it just kind of depends, right? Will you be satisfied with a kit to start out?
Yeah. Right.
I think that's kind of important too. Like, you might work your way up and get something a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Or if you're learning, like we were learning, I wouldn't recommend investing a whole ton of money.
Yeah.
As you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to hear how some of those kits sound. I know that our library may be purchasing a couple podcast kits. So I'll be curious to see what those are like and how they sound.
Yeah. All right.
Anything else on equipment?
No, it's like you said, I think it's kind of hard. I though, have really enjoyed working with Rode. Mm-hmm. And I like the mics. I like the soundboard that we have. So I really like the brand. So if anything, I am definitely a fan of our setup right now.
Yes, me too. It would be hard to go to something different.
Yeah, it would. It would.
Especially smaller.
Yeah.
And not as many features.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And another thing you might consider is on some of those kits, where are you recording?
Yes.
Are you recording directly onto some kind of device like a laptop? Mm-hmm. Are you recording onto a micro disc? Mm-hmm. Does your device have other soundtracks on it? Mm-hmm. Like ours does. Or do you need that or care? Right. Or can you bring in a track from somewhere else?
Right.
Which we used to do. Mm-hmm. I think we'd be happy to answer questions too, even though this is our final episode. If you are listening to this and you just have a few questions, feel free to email us or put a comment in the blog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's now our segment, What's on Your Radar?
What's on our radar for the future? So we put that tag on there. It's not just what's on our radar now. Since it is the final episode, it's what's on our radar for the future.
Yeah, we're going to share with you what's on our radar for the rest of our lives.
Or maybe at least for the next 6 months.
Okay, Tanisha, you go first.
Honestly, to be perfectly honest, I really don't know what is on the horizon for me as far as my future after the podcast. The plan is still to be here at GCC teaching. I love what I do. I love the campus. I love all of it. But as far as what the next steps were going to be, I don't know, because we've been here for the past 11 years teaching full time. And I personally feel like I've done a lot in my 11 years here. So for example, this podcast, sitting on the Faculty Senate as a Faculty Senate member, Faculty Senate Secretary, and then Faculty Senate President, doing work in faculty development with our Center for Teaching, Learning, Engagement here on our campus, and then also district-wide, sitting on different committees, various hiring committees. And it's been a trip, and I'm really excited for it. I'm really thankful for it. But now I'm kind of like that what's the next step type of person. Right. I always want to know what is the next step, what is the next thing I'm working towards. And honestly, I really don't know. The thing that's kind of been percolating in my brain lately has been considering a sabbatical. Mm-hmm. And as far as what that is or what that could be, I really don't know. But that is definitely, I could say, on my radar for the future. So I guess if there is anything on my radar, I guess it would be a sabbatical, but I'm still on the fence about it. It's not a definite yes, and it's not a definite no. It's kind of floating in my brain a little bit.
You're thinking about it.
I'm thinking about it. I have to marinate on it just a little bit. So that's where I'm at. So honestly, I really don't know what the future holds, but I am excited for it.
Yeah. Man, when you put that whole list of things together that you've done, it does sound like a lot.
Yeah. I said, done a lot in 11 years. 11 years. So, So
Good
yeah,
for
so
you.
That's me.
Yeah, so I don't feel like mine are quite as, I don't know. This is a really hard question now. I think the things on my list are just very personal. Like I want to do more camping. And I'm also at a different point than Tanisha is because I'm nearer to retirement than she is. So I think that's why I'm also like probably jumping ahead a little bit and looking at, what's on my radar for those?
Right.
I want to create, I want to write, I want to create art, I want to paint a mural.
Yes.
I mean, I've got things that I want to do that it's not like the podcast is taking away from any of those things, but it will definitely free up some time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. The finale.
I know it is the finale. I know there was that moment like, oh, this is the end. Yep. So we are going to start wrapping up. So those of you who've been listening, you know where this is going if you're listening for the first time.
But we mixed it up a little bit.
We did mix it up a little bit, so it's not going to be exactly the same. Yeah. So, all right, here we go. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation and want to join in, connect with us on Blue Sky. Find our previous episodes on our blog at twoprofsinapod.blogspot.com. Remember to spell out the number 2. Thank you, everyone, for showing your support for all of these years. Two Profs in a Pod is hosted by Beth Ayers, English faculty, and Tanisha Baca, communication faculty. The show is brought to you by the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Engagement at Glendale Community College in Arizona. Signing out for the last time, I'm Tanisha.
I'm Beth.
It's been our pleasure to host this podcast together.